Welcome to another episode of A Cuppa with a Conversationalist. My name is Con and I am the Conversationalist. And as always, I have my latte in tow. A recent study by the Mental Health Foundation in the UK found that in the past year, a staggering 74% of people were so stressed that they were overwhelmed and unable to cope. My guest today is Rebekah King. Rebekah is a neuro-linguistic programming master practitioner, a hypnotherapist, speaker, and life coach. As a former corporate professional who for years navigated depression and anxiety, Rebekah reached what seemed like an insurmountable low. A pivotal encounter with a renowned Australian coach led Rebekah to delve deep into understanding her mind's mechanisms, where she embarked on a transformative journey to rewire her thinking. Her own remarkable journey inspired Rebekah to effect radical shifts in her life, becoming a source of strength and inspiration to others, seeking liberation from anxiety and self-limiting beliefs. Welcome to the program, Rebekah.
Thank you, Con. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
You're most welcome. Depression, it was a staggering statistic, 74% of people being so stressed or overwhelmed that they can't cope with their lives. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is a huge statistic, Con, and quite devastating when you hear that. I know it's something that I struggled with for more than 20 years of my life, and I know there's a lot of people around there, especially because, one of the reasons I feel is this disconnection that we tend to have these days, more so in the last couple of years. But there's so many things that impact us, our lives, our brain, and we can end up in this real state of not knowing exactly what to do with that. So I feel that statistic because I've been there, and that's partly why I do what I do.
Yeah. And as I said in the introduction, obviously your life's journey has led you to where you are. Can you share a little bit about your experience and how you recognized you were suffering from anxiety, stress, depression, and what that looked like?
Yeah, look, it started a long time ago for me, Con, even as early as my sort of mid to late teens. And at the time, it was, it seemed situational. My dad was diagnosed with cancer when I was about 14. He passed away when I was 16. So he was only young himself, his mid-40s. And of course, that has a major impact on the life of the family, his wife, children. I was just about to start year 12. So it was a huge amount of pressure. And so what it looked like for me at that point in time was, I guess, lethargy, emotions. It was a huge amount of grief as well. But then what it turned into for me over the years was a really cyclical thing. Like I would feel it coming on around September. He died in January. And so I would start feeling down and blue around a particular time of the year, leading up to the anniversary of his death. I wouldn't want to do things. I would be sad, sort of making plans, cancelling plans, that kind of thing. That did evolve over the years. That was the pattern for quite a number of years. But then as I got older, other things happened in my life, relationships that weren't, healthy relationships, unhealthy choices that I would make in terms of, nutrition, exercise, that type of thing. Let's just call it nutrition and put that in all of this started compounding, working in toxic workplaces, all of that type of thing. And I was not in control of my brain. I didn't understand how that all worked back then. And that compounded into then developing anxiety. And so what it looked like about 4 years ago, because that's when it got to the pinnacle of, I got to do something about this, was that there were days that I couldn't get out of bed. I was literally in the fetal position in my bed. I couldn't even get up to walk 2 meters to go and put myself in the shower. I wasn't even able to take my dogs out for a walk. I've got 2 dogs, and everybody says, get out, be in the fresh air, go for a walk, you'll feel better. And that that's probably true. But to even just get out of the front door is impossible sometimes. So I was missing a lot of work. I wasn't catching up with people. So life was not good. That's what it looked like for me before things changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
I heard a phrase many years ago in the personal development space that change is only initiated when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mm.
We often hear people go, I'm just sick and tired of this. I'm sick and tired of that. But until they're actually sick and tired of being sick and tired, they're not going to initiate change.
That's exactly right, Con.
What was that point for you? When did you, I guess, acknowledge that I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired? Enough.
Yeah. For me, it was the point. I was in so much pain. And when we talk about pain, of course, it's not always physical pain, it's emotional pain, mental pain. I was at the point where I couldn't think about my future without thinking that I didn't want a future. So for me, the only option was, potentially to end my life. And that was the pinnacle for me, because I thought, I don't want to die, but I cannot figure out how to live. I just don't know how to live. I was feeling so anxious about so many things in my future. And underneath that was a lot of fear. And I was lucky that somebody stepped in at that point and introduced me to the person who was able to help me realize what was actually happening and how I could change that.
Okay. And I know, speak to people often, and as a professional speaking and communication trainer and coach, one of the things that I say to people is about their fears, their anxieties, whatever they are. There's a deeper level, okay, and there's a process that you need to go through to enact that change.
Mm-hmm.
Where did it start for you? So you've had this chance encounter. What was the first thing or the first few things that you had to do to start that process of enacting that change?
That's a really good question, Con. The first thing I really had to do, and this was a tough part, Con, because I had to be open to the idea that there was a solution. Now, I say that this is hard because for 20 years, I'd been looking for help. I had been working with medical professionals. I have been through psychology, psychiatry. I'd taken medication, counseling. I even saw a witch doctor in Bali. I felt like I'd done everything, right? Homeopaths, everything. I felt like I'd tried everything. Yeah, I've seen some weird and cool people over the years, and I'm really into alternative stuff. But I had gotten to the point, Con, where I was very cynical. I'd been told for years and years, this is just who you are, Beck. It's a chemical imbalance in your brain. It's possibly hereditary. You will always be like this. You simply need to find a way to manage it and cope with it and learn some coping strategies. So I had this pumped into my brain. And of course, when you learn about neuro-linguistics, you understand how that actually impacts you. So I had to go into this with a tiny glimmer of hope that there was some sort of solution. But I tell you, I'll be very honest with you and say I was very, very cynical. But I went into coaching. So I was introduced to a coach. And one of the first things really that helped, that I guess was the catalyst to this change, was learning how my brain works, because I had no idea. You know, I'm not a neurologist, and I wasn't really one to do my own research. You know, I just sort of listened to other people and what they would tell me. So I had to start learning about what was actually going on up here, how I'd been conditioned and how that was impacting me. So that was the first thing, learning how my brain works. And then it was a lot of different things. Of course, there's lots of tools and techniques that you do through coaching that undoes that conditioning. So understanding that we learn things as we go through life. You know, everything that we do has a pattern to it. If I want to learn a different language, you know, there's a certain process that I'm going to follow. And that's exactly the same as everything in life. And we need to understand that. So everything that we learn can be unlearned. And so I had to go through this process of unlearning all of these patterns and strategies that I'd created around depression and anxiety. But of course, I needed the help of a professional to do that because I didn't understand how that worked. And then it was, of course, bringing in lots of the little tools, you know, day to day. So I became very mindful of the language that I was using. I had no idea how impactful the language that I use has on me. You know, even the little things like identifying as having depression. I have depression, I have anxiety. It's basically me telling my brain, oh, guess what? Let's go and find evidence to support that. So even just switching that around, because our thoughts become our reality, right? Our thoughts create our reality. So what we think, and that's a beautiful quote from Gandhi, you know, quite a long quote, but what we think becomes our destiny. So when I started to become more aware, and that's, you know, the foundational point of what I do is helping people become aware. When I started to become aware of these things, I was able to start making small changes. So it wasn't one big thing that happened and I went, hey, I'm fixed. It was a series of small things over time.
I love some of the one-liners that you've dropped here. The witch doctor's great. That's gold. That's gold. This is a first, ladies and gentlemen. This is an absolute first for me. I've never spoken to somebody that's been to a witch doctor, a real live witch doctor. That's a conversation for another. I'd love to have a chat about your experience with the witch doctor. Beck, people who are, whether they're suffering from depression, whether anxiety, whether it's whatever the reasons are, and you talk to them about process for change and that there is a better way, you know, there is a solution, and the response is typically, that sounds easy, but you don't understand, Beck. You know, I've got, you know, my job, kids, family. You know, it's just not that easy, Beck. It's just not that easy. What do you say about that?
I've never said I'll never say to anyone that this is easy. It is simple, but not easy. Okay. And that's the thing. We do need to, anything that we do and anything that we want to do well takes effort. Okay, so I don't really like to use the words hard and easy, but everything that we do takes effort. So, you know, if somebody's saying to me, you know, life, Beck, kids, job, etc., it's like, well, you put time and effort into raising your children, don't you? Is it easy? And I'm pretty sure, I'm not a parent to humans, I'm a parent to dogs, but I'm pretty sure that there's no parent on the planet who would say, yeah, raising children is easy. So, you know, okay. At your job, when you first start your job, was it easy? Oh, not necessarily. You know, you had to learn a new skill. You had to build rapport with the people that you work with. You had to manage your workload. So not necessarily easy, right? But you did it. And you're likely, you know, walk in each day and things are a lot simpler now. You know, the more that we do something, consistency, repetition, it becomes easier. And the other side of that, Con, is that I am that living, breathing example that it is possible, because I'm pretty bold when I say I help people eliminate anxiety. So I'm not here to help you cope with it. I'm not here to help you manage it for the rest of your life. We will I'll certainly share strategies while we're getting to the end result, but I'm here to help you eliminate it. And that's a bold statement. But it will take effort. It does mean a commitment in time, financially. It does potentially mean that you'll be leaving people and situations behind. Toxic people and situations, they will leave your life. And that can be really scary. I get it. I have been there. I have experienced a lot in my life. And I truly believe that the reason I've experienced all these things is so that I can create, I can build rapport. I have empathy for these people. I am very familiar with a lot of situations. Everybody's experience is different, of course, but I do have an understanding on a deep level, and I'm very open about sharing my story and the situations I've been in, because I know that when you can see somebody who's been there before, it gives you hope as well.
I had the absolute pleasure. I have a really deep interest in neuroscience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fascinated how our thought process create chemical reactions which have an impact on a whole range of things that we do. I had the pleasure to listen to Alan Parker, OAM, who's a neuroscientist, keynote speaker, global, absolute superstar. And he spoke about society as a rule, or as a guide, as per that study that I spoke about at the beginning of the program. We're so stressed with whatever's going on in our lives that it almost becomes, the body almost normalizes it. And so we build up almost, it's a bit like the analogy that he used, which was great, was antibiotics. We keep taking antibiotics, and eventually what happens is that the bugs just get better and better and better. And so we're normalizing this stress and the levels of cortisol in our body. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm really curious on your thoughts on that, first of all. But secondly, I'd love you to share, let's get practical in terms of some strategies that people can go, okay, that's getting a little bit out of hand. What can we do?
Yeah, it's a great topic of conversation, Con, and you're right. And it's interesting that you bring this up, because I'm just preparing for a retreat that we're holding on Sunday, which is all about self-care at its core, and self-care being much more than bubble baths and massage. They're nice too, but self-care is, it's so much deeper than that. And so I've just been putting some notes together about this, and it's that you called it stress. I talk about busy, right? I hate the word busy, and I don't use the word hate very often. It's a very strong word, but a BS word, right? And this busyness, we've normalized this busyness. We have to always be doing something. We're working full time, which many of us have to, costs of living high, etc. Our kids are doing sports 3 nights a week and then dancing on the weekend. We're going to kids' birthday parties. It's become normal, which is creating this stress response. Okay, and anxiety is a stress response. And we're living in that constant state of fight or flight. Our nervous system is completely out of whack. Then we don't do those self-care things like feeding ourselves nutritious meals, moving our body, stimulating our mind, because we don't have time, right? And so our sympathetic nervous system is overloaded. And really, one of the simplest things that we can do is reevaluate. We need to understand what is important to us. And we're not really taught about how we develop our values. You know, we take on our values and our beliefs from a very, very young age. In fact, by the time we're 7 years old, approximately 70% of our identity is already formed. And so we live our life based on these values that we've taken from other people and society. And it's not until we perhaps get a bit older where we get to this point where we go, oh my goodness, I'm so overwhelmed, stressed, I'm at burnout, that we start reevaluating these things. So some practical tips and tools is to pare things back. It's about starting to understand what is important to me. Why do I do these things? For what purpose? And that is an incredibly powerful question to ask yourself about anything. For what purpose? And then one of the actual practical things that we can do is we need to re-engage, or we need to start engaging our parasympathetic nervous system, because I talked about that fight and flight place that so many people live in. And you know that you're living in this if you're constantly feeling stressed, anxious, tight chest. You know, it's kind of like that, you know, for people watching the video, I'm shrugging my shoulders and I'm holding my body tight. We're breathing in our chest. And so our body is ready to fight or flee. It's that, you know, it's that primal instinct. And when we engage our parasympathetic nervous system, we signal to our body that it's okay to rest and digest. And a very, very simple way to do it, and I love simple, is to breathe. Now, I know that that might sound like people are going to be saying, Beck, I breathe every day. Like, I'm breathing right now. I'm not talking about just the everyday breath that you do unconsciously that you didn't even think about until I said breathe. I am talking about intentional breathing. You know, it's a bit of a buzzword, breath work, but do you know what? People use breath work, meditation, journaling, all of these tools because they're simple. They've been used they're ancient. People have been doing these things for years and years and years. And if you look at some of the other civilizations around the world who live into their, you know, late 90s, hundreds even, and what they do, they use a lot of these techniques. So one of the simplest things you can do is start to breathe intentionally.
Which leads me into my next question, and it's a lovely segue. One of the challenges, or one of the biggest issues that I won't say generationally, but societally, is this instant gratification, this desire for instant gratification.
Yeah.
I want it now.
Yeah.
I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm frustrated. And Beck, you're telling me that I have to spend time with you, I have to spend money with you. I don't have time, Beck. Isn't there a pill? Surely there's just a pill that I can take.
Do you want a Band-Aid or do you want a solution? Yeah, and this is a lot of the work that I do with people, Con. It really is learning to reframe, because we're all in a hurry, right? We want a quick fix, we want an instant fix, and even this word fix, you know, are we really broken? We're not broken, okay? We just have gotten ourselves. How long has it taken you to get to this point in time? It didn't just happen overnight, as the saying goes. It has been a culmination of years and years and lots of different experiences. Now, we can actually, with neuro-linguistic programming, we can undo certain things very, very quickly. It's quite incredible. But this is a lifelong journey, right? You can't just make a couple of changes, you know, do a couple of different things a few times and go, oh, I feel better, and then go back to your old way of living. That it's the old way of living that's got you to this point. So yeah, you have to do the things. You have to want to change. And that's what it comes down to, is a desire to change. So if you're at a point in your life where you are so stressed and frustrated and overwhelmed, and yet you're not willing to do anything to change it, you're not my person. You know, like, you're not ready.
You're not sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Exactly. You are not in enough pain yet. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, I can absolutely. It answers my question, and I hope for the viewers and the listeners, you're really taking this on board.
And I just point out that was an interesting thing you said about time, Con. It's one of the things that I hear a lot of. I don't have time. But I've been guilty of it myself in the past. Probably have said it even recently about a couple of things. The difference is I catch myself and I go, hang on a second, let's reframe that. I am making the choice not to put my time and effort into that particular thing, even though I probably know that it's going to make a difference in my life. And this is what it comes back to, Con, is purpose. That question, for what purpose? So I challenge anyone who says, I don't have time. What I want to ask you is, or people also say, I can't afford that. I want to ask you, can you afford not to do this? What trajectory are you on? If you keep this lifestyle up, where are you headed? And that's a pretty big question. Now, I don't know about you, Con, but I'm gunning for minimum 95 years old, right? 95 years old, that's where I'm heading. And so I have to look to the future. I have to visualize myself as a 95-year-old woman. And I don't want to be a little old woman who's sitting in a rocking chair on a porch, unable to move. I want to be traveling the world. I want to still be, helping people. I want to have a sanctuary for senior golden retrievers who they can come to me. I can look after them. I need to be able to move. I need to be able to be, healthy. So with that in mind, that is a question I can ask myself. What do I have to do now to get there? Because it won't be enough to make changes when I'm 80 years old. It'll be too late to make big changes to get there. It might be too late. So for what purpose, and what's it cost you if you don't do this?
One of the things that you practice and a high level of expertise in is hypnotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
And you say to people hypnotherapy, and people have these almost witch doctorish images of hypnotherapy, where they're controlling people, and it's like, watch the watch, you are now getting sleepy, and then getting people to basically control them, acting like chickens on a stage and all this kind of caper. And so the thing is, there's an element of fear behind hypnotherapy. Like, are you going to hypnotize me for evil purposes?
Yeah.
What is hypnotherapy really?
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, because it is a myth. And unfortunately, popular culture has given that, you're going to put me to sleep and make me cluck like a chicken. That's not what I'm going to do. I like explaining hypnotherapy like this. Our mind is made up of our conscious mind and our unconscious mind. And our unconscious mind is approximately 95% of our mind. So approximately 95%, some say 98%, of our mind are things that we do unconsciously. So think breathing, digestion, blinking, all of even when you drive the same route to work every day, that becomes an unconscious habit. So that leaves only 5% of our mind that is conscious. And our conscious mind is always trying to be logical and rational. It's trying to overpower the unconscious. So what we need to do is we need to quieten down the conscious, because to make lasting and impactful change, we have to make it at an unconscious level. So I like to explain hypnotherapy like this. It's like boring the crap out of your conscious mind. So it goes, I'll just go over here and have a bit of a snooze, and allows the gate to open to your unconscious mind so that we can make suggestions to your unconscious mind about what it is that you do want, so it can override the message that's already there of the things that are no longer serving you. So it's not about putting people to sleep. You're awake the whole time. I mean, some people do fall asleep when they're under hypnotherapy, but everybody that I work with, they're asleep. Sorry, they're awake.
Yeah.
They're awake, they're conscious, they're just very, very relaxed. And we go into that relaxed state. It's almost like, it's that state just before we go to sleep. That's what hypnotherapy is in simple terms.
Okay. One of the things, I'll tie this all together now. You touched on it before about, the power of language and how we speak. And I always say to people, the way we speak to ourselves, we probably wouldn't speak to our worst enemy.
Yeah.
We're so hypercritical of ourselves, deprecating, self-deprecating, and it's awful.
Yes.
What I want to ask you is, when we're from an affirmation perspective, when we're changing the language that we're using about who we are, what we are, etc., I was always taught that the best time to do affirmations is just before you go to bed and first thing when you wake up, because of the state of the brain is a bit, as you just said, hypnotherapy. Is that correct?
Yeah, because yes, and you're right. And even listening to hypnotic audios with those suggestions of what it is that you do want or what you want to shift, your unconscious mind is on 24/7. So it hears the message no matter what. And of course, and I'm glad you brought up affirmations, because I want to, I'd love to talk about that for a moment. But if you are using an affirmation at night, then that also helps the way that you sleep and wake up in the morning, right? Our evening routine is really, really important. If we're watching, TV right up until the end, we're watching scary movies, or we're scrolling on our phone and we're seeing all this, crap on social media, we're going to sleep feeling a bit meh. We have a bad night's sleep or an unrest sleep, and then we can wake up in a bad mood, and then that sets the tone for the day, and on the cycle goes. So if you are doing something positive at night, like repeating affirmations back to yourself, and you go to sleep with it in your mind, then that's a really positive thing, right? And that's going to impact everything else. And then it is going to embed those suggestions. What I would say about affirmations is you have to believe them, though. So your beliefs are really important here, because I could use affirmations like, I am beautiful, I am successful, as an example, right? Now, if I truly don't believe that I am beautiful or that I'm a successful person, if there's some underlying belief there based on, something that's happened or been said to me in the past, then they're not going to work, right? Because that little voice in the back of my head, that little Rebekah back here, is going to go, no, you're not. You're not beautiful. You're not successful. And so what I actually love is something called affirmations. And this was, it's something from a guy called Noah St. John from the States. And he's got a book called The Complete Guide of Affirmations. And it's about forming questions, the right questions, because what we naturally want to do when we ask ourselves a question is answer the question. So it's about finding the right question to give us the answer that we want, and then implant that. So just with affirmations, I think if they work for you and you've got the right ones, fantastic. I'm all for going with what works for you. But if you truly don't believe it, then you've got some work to do to unpack that.
Okay. A couple of things come out of that for me. And I'm pretty sure that the listeners and viewers will be scratching their head exactly like I am. The first thing is, I get the part you truly have to believe it. I've got $1.27 in my bank account. I can't be affirming that I'm wealthy, because my brain's going, mate, you got $1.27. Yeah. Like, you're broke.
Yeah.
But using what I call bridging terms, i.e., I am becoming, or I am working towards. So it becomes more, I guess, believable. So
yeah.
firstly, your thoughts on that, but secondly, what you were just mentioning about affirmations, can you give us an example of that?
Sure. Yeah, to your first point, yeah, I love your bridging words. I love an I am statement, you know, as opposed to I want to be successful or I want to be wealthy. Because again, our thoughts create our reality, right? And so if we are using I am statements, perhaps with a bridging word, then yes, it's more likely to sit. And I love some of these really small but powerful words. You know, yet is a really, really powerful word, just as an example of the power of language. You know, I can't do that yet. You know, that changes the whole context of things, doesn't it? To your second point, an example of an affirmation. Yeah, so, you know, if we were to use this, use like nutritional movement as an example, you know, it might be something like, actually, no, let me use this one because I talked about sleep routines or evening and morning routines. So, you know, a lot of us, we wake up feeling tired and we're lacking energy and, you know, all that kind of thing. So it might be something like asking yourself a question, how is it that I wake up feeling refreshed and energized? And my answer to myself might be because I have an evening routine where I am calm, I've created a beautiful space in my bedroom, and I'm doing the things that make me feel good. I mean, this is just off the top of my head at the moment, Con. So my brain goes, oh, okay, yeah, I'm having I'm having a good night's sleep. That's why I wake up feeling rested and refreshed. So my brain is going, oh, okay, I'm going to have a good night's sleep. I'm going to wake up refreshed and energized. And so we wake up in the morning and our thoughts create our reality and we're waking up refreshed and energized. Now, I'm not saying that you do that one time and you've solved the problem, but I worked with a client last year who brought this into her life because she was really struggling with anxiety. You know, she was walking on eggshells with everything in her job, in her personal life, feeling anxious all the time, was waking up in, you know, not in a good space. And this is one of the simple things that she changed about the questions that she asked herself at night. And lo and behold, she started waking up feeling different. So that's how powerful it can be.
Ask a better question, get a better result.
Absolutely.
There you go. Whilst we're on language and the way that we speak to ourselves, many people that I work with, a common question is when they do a presentation or we're going through the initial stages of working together, there's a lot of self-deprecating humor being used.
Yeah.
And I say to them, okay, why? And the response is, oh, it just, you know, just takes the focus off. It just relaxes me. It makes me feel better. You know, I'm more in touch with the audience or my crowd. And I always, I've said to people, just like anything else, and touching on the point that you made, you know, our beliefs, our values and everything formed from when we were 7. You know, you're not smart enough, you're not good looking enough, you know, you'll always be this, you'll always be that, you're this, you're that. And the more it's just drummed into you, eventually you're going to believe it. So I say to them, guys, you keep taking the mickey out of yourself with self-deprecating humor, eventually, if you haven't already, you're going to start believing it.
Yes.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, you're 100% correct there. Again, going back to that wonderful Gandhi quote that I referenced earlier, you know, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions, etc. Because what we believe becomes the way that we think. What we think becomes the words that we use internally and externally. And that can create that real deep-seated belief. And it's really interesting that you brought that up because I hear I do hear a lot of people, as you say, taking the mickey out of themselves, and it becomes part of their identity. And look, I think I've got a pretty good sense of humor, and I love to, have a joke. But there's a fine line, and when I hear people doing things like that, saying things like that about themselves now, I must admit, I probably have the coach hat on a bit, and I think, wow, what has gone on in your life for you to feel that way about yourself? And I think this goes back to that question that I mentioned earlier, for what purpose? So for what purpose are you saying these things about yourself? Or, and they might say, oh, well, because it makes people laugh. Well, for what purpose? Well, I like making people happy. Well, for what purpose? Because then it makes me feel like I'm liked. Oh, for what purpose? Well, because I don't like it when people don't like me. I feel a sense of, disconnection or fear or unloved. Ah, okay, now we're getting down to it. So again, asking better questions and getting to the root cause. And that's what I'm all about in the work that I do, both with private coaching clients and in our membership. It's about getting to the root cause of things. So like I said, I love to have a joke as well. And, I don't mind having a joke at my own expense, but I'm very aware of what it does to myself. I mentioned self-care earlier on. And part of self-care is being really kind to ourselves. And a lot of us have spent, myself included, spent a lot of years kicking the crap out of ourselves. So it's time to get a little bit warm and fuzzy and ask ourselves, why are we doing that? And what could we do differently? And what result are we going to get from that?
I openly share with my groups when we talk about self-deprecating humor and the using better quality self-talk and how we view ourselves. 12, 15 years ago, whenever it was, I went through a stage where I couldn't look at myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
Like there was self-loathing, hatred. And as a bloke, when you got a shave, the mirror is quite important.
Yeah, I never thought of that. Yeah.
And that was a real challenge. And it was really all about how I viewed myself and the conversations that I was having with myself that were just constantly being reinforced. And I can't, again, not to the extent of what you went through, but ladies and gentlemen, please believe, if you don't believe me, believe Rebekah as the expert here. What we say to ourselves, we need to catch ourselves in the conversations that we're having with ourselves, but also being really careful about what we allow to come our way in terms of what we allow people to say ourselves and then make excuses for other people's behavior.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We are the gatekeepers to our own lives, Con. Again, if I can use parents as an example, and I include myself, I'm looking down, I've got my dogs here, I include myself here. We want the best for our children, right? We, like dogs included, we want them to have nutritious food. We want them to move. We want them to have enriched experiences. We want them to learn and grow. We want them to be safe. And on the same token, we don't want them to be around toxic people. We don't want to feed them unhealthy food. We don't want them to live a sedentary lifestyle. So we are the gatekeepers to our children's lives, but we are also the gatekeepers to our own lives, right? So it is up to us who we let into our life, what type of food we allow ourselves to eat, whether we move or don't move. We are the gatekeepers. And that is a really great point you touched on, is what are we allowing into our lives externally, but what are we allowing internally? Because if we do want to make changes in our life, if we are at the point where we've got to do something, or even if we're getting close to it, it's not about external looking outside. It's about internal reflection. This is where the answers are in here. The years of avoiding situations, ignoring emotions, ignoring feelings, you know, we store all of that. Okay, we store all of it. And if we don't deal with it, if we don't actually let it out, if we don't have a bit of that uncomfortableness, if that's a word, then our body will find a way to express it at some point. And usually that will come out in illness and disease. So, you know, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but of course, you know, the things that we're saying to ourselves, the things that we're allowing into our life, and the things that we allow ourselves and others, it is going to come out in some form one time or another. So do we make changes now, or do we wait for the proverbial worst to happen?
Where worst case.
Yeah.
Rebekah, I could talk to you for hours about this subject, as I'm sure you could.
Yeah.
What I'd ask you to, I guess, add some value to our already very, very valuable contribution that you have made to the program. Give our audience, if they're feeling anxious, overwhelmed, whatever their circumstances may be, can you give them Rebekah's 3 top tips to start heading in the right direction? Three top simple tips.
Absolutely. Look, I like to make it nice and simple with the ABCs. Okay.
Beautiful.
So number one, A, is awareness. Okay. It's about becoming aware. We can't change a situation until we understand what it is, until we're aware of it. So find a way to become more present and more aware, whether that's through being still, whether that is through meditation, and that's a whole other conversation because there's a bit of around meditation, or whether that is simply through getting stuff out of your head and onto paper. So awareness is number one. You must become aware. Then the B, it's for brain health, right? It's about learning how your brain works so that you can then retrain it. You know, I said that at the beginning. One of the first things that I was able to do, one of the first things I had to do to be able to make change was understand what was happening. So learning how to retrain your brain is your brain health. And then C is choice. And this is just simply understanding that you have a choice. It is your choice to stay where you are or move in a different direction. So make the choice to get clear and change. And there's lots of tools that we can provide, you know, that are available to you, that you can either find yourself or, you know, find on our website even. But stick with your ABCs: awareness, brain health, and choice, and you will notice the changes.
Rebekah, thank you very, very, very much for your time. Great awareness, great quality content in terms of, as we said, you know, 74% according to that study in the UK. And we want to not normalize this. We want people to have that awareness, as you did at some point, and there is better. And I wrote down what you said earlier, which is really quite profound. You didn't know how to live, but you knew you didn't want to die.
Yeah.
And I guess death means much different to many people. Death isn't necessarily death as in the death of the physical body, but death as in, you know, the way we live, and just accepting things are and things will never change, and that's the way it is. So I thank you for I've got a million pearls of wisdom over here, so which obviously I'll share in the show notes. I'll put your contact details, Rebekah, in the show notes as well. So ladies and gentlemen, if anybody wants to reach out to Rebekah, we'll have her details there. And if you're ready for change, I strongly suggest you get in contact with Rebekah. My guest today has been Rebekah King, Neuro-Linguistic Programming Master Practitioner, Hypnotherapist, Speaker and Life Coach. Thank you very much, Rebekah.
Thank you for having me, Con. It's been a pleasure.
My name's Con. I am the Conversationalist, and until next time, bye for now.